Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, jump right in with me here. Imagine a civilization on the move, fundamentally shaping the history, language, and culture of a massive part of the world. Thousands of years ago, a nomadic group migrated out of Central Asia in waves, and today, we're looking at the structural foundations they laid down, the early Vedic civilization. Think about the sheer scale of that impact for a second. We're talking about a culture without heavy stone monuments or grand libraries, literally carrying an entire civilization solely in their minds and voices. Okay, let's dive into this and get grounded in time. We're starting right around 1500 BCE. The highly advanced Harappan civilization had stagnated, and exactly at this moment, the Aryans began arriving in India. Our main focus today is the early Vedic period, which spans from 1500 to roughly 1000 BCE. After that point, they pushed further into the Gangetic Plains, kicking off the later Vedic period, which eventually wound down around 500 BCE. So, to really unpack this civilization, we're going to hit 5 key areas today: the arrival, the secret words, power and people, society and daily life, and finally, economy and nature worship. Section 1, the arrival. As their populations back in Central Asia kept swelling, these nomadic groups literally had to pack up and find new pastures. The ones who migrated down into India became known as the Indo-Aryans. And they didn't just wander aimlessly. They zeroed in on a really specific, incredibly fertile area called the Sapta Sindhu, which translates to the region of the 7 rivers. They actually held this new land in such high regard that they named it Brahmavarta, meaning the land of the gods. Moving right along to Section 2, the secret words. Once they settled down, their intellectual and linguistic foundation truly exploded. They brought this incredibly profound tool with them, Sanskrit. And look, this wasn't just some basic dialect for bartering over crops. It was a wildly sophisticated language that became the root for so many modern languages. It's often literally called the mother of languages. The Aryans didn't just migrate, they laid down a linguistic framework that would echo for millennia. Using this new language, they composed ancient religious texts that we know as the Vedas. The word Veda itself just means knowledge or wisdom. You've got 4 primary ones: the Rig Veda, the Atharva Veda, the Samaveda, and the Yajur Veda. But here is the absolute most staggering part about these collections of teachings and hymns. For hundreds of years, they were composed and passed down entirely verbally. No scrolls, no writing, nothing. Just pure, rigorous oral transmission from generation to generation before anyone ever wrote them down centuries later. Now, while all 4 of those are vital, the Rig Veda is absolutely the centerpiece here. In fact, this whole era is often called the Rig Vedic period, simply because this single text is our best window into their lives. It acts like this massive treasure house of their collective wisdom, and it holds the keys to understanding how they existed day to day. Which brings us to Section 3, power and people. Let's move to and see how this builds, because obviously a society can't function on hymns alone, right? It needs structure. They built theirs logically, right from the ground up. The absolute foundation was the joint family, led by the eldest living male, called the Griya Pati. You group a bunch of families together, you get a village, or grama, headed by a gramani. Finally, a network of those villages forms a massive tribe, a jana, led by a chieftain known as a rajan. It's this incredibly elegant, scalable, bottom-up political hierarchy. But here is a super crucial point about that rajan. You'd probably assume an ancient tribal chieftain ruled with an iron fist, right? Well, actually, they did not have absolute power. Instead, their authority was firmly controlled and checked by 2 totally distinct councils. The Samiti was this large assembly where basically any tribe member could voice their opinion on major matters. Then you had the Saha, which was a smaller, more exclusive board of important members who directly advised the king. So everyone had a say. And get this, women actively took part in these assemblies too, which is just incredibly fascinating for the time. All right, Section 4, society and daily life. The daily reality of these early citizens featured some highly progressive elements that might actually surprise you. Women held a very strong position in society. They were educated, and like I mentioned, some women scholars even composed their own Rig Vedic hymns. The society entirely avoided child marriage, they allowed widows to remarry, and they practiced monogamy. But perhaps the coolest part? A public ceremony called a Swayamvara, where women could freely choose their own husbands from a whole group of assembled suitors. Another area that was notably flexible during this early period was their class system. They grouped themselves into 4 main classes, or varnas, but it was strictly based on their skills and the actual jobs they performed. The key takeaway here is flexibility. In the early Vedic period, if you were born into one Varna but changed your occupation, you just changed Varnas. It was a fluid division of labor. It wasn't until the later Vedic period that this unfortunately rigidified into a strict caste system, where people were locked into whatever they were born as. So to break down those four groups, you have the Brahmanas. These were the educated priests imparting education and leading religious rites, like open-air yagnas. Then the Kshatriyas, the warriors protecting the tribe. Next, the Vaishyas, your farmers and traders providing the vital goods. And finally, the Shudras, the laborers who served the other groups. It was like a giant puzzle where every single group played a necessary role to help these self-sufficient villages actually thrive. And finally, Section 5, Economy and Nature Worship. So, what sustained these people day to day? As they slowly transitioned from wandering nomads to settled farmers who really understood the seasons, trades like chariot-making, weaving, and metalworking started to flourish. But the ultimate status symbol remained totally tied to their pastoral roots: the cow. The cow wasn't just livestock, it was the definitive mark of absolute wealth. Kings would literally gift cows to priests just to show off immense power and gratitude. On the spiritual side, the Aryans believed in one supreme power that created the universe, but they worshipped that power through the different forces of nature. The heavyweight was Indra, god of rain and thunder. Next was Agni, the god of fire. And they actually believed that the smoke from their yagnas was Agni physically carrying their messages straight up to heaven. They also worshipped Surya, the sun, Varuna for water, and Vayu, the wind. What is truly awe-inspiring here is that they worshipped these forces entirely in the open air. They chanted hymns, offered grain, ghee, and milk, and they built absolutely zero temples and crafted zero idols. But hey, they weren't entirely focused on surviving and worshiping. They definitely knew how to have a great time. Their daily recreation paints this wonderfully relatable picture. They were massive fans of outdoor sports like high-speed chariot racing and hunting. They loved music and dance and often enjoyed beverages like soma and sura. And when they were stuck indoors, they were avid players of dice and board games. It's just a beautifully human side to a society we mostly view as deeply structured and spiritual. Which brings us to a final, staggering thought. The early Vedic civilization built no grand stone temples, they carved no idols, and for centuries they didn't write down a single word. Yet somehow, their social structures, their complex language, and their profound texts survived for millennia. So, how does a culture manage to pass down such a towering legacy using absolutely nothing but the sheer power of human memory and the spoken word? It's an unbelievable testament to the resilience of their oral traditions. I hope this deep dive sparked your curiosity today. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning history.